Recital. Blessed is the Lord who trains my hands for battle, my fingers for warfare. Psalm 144. 1. The original poem. My hands, French braiding my daughter's hair before her recital, are suddenly my grandmother's kneading the ceremonial Friday night challah. The same dark veins, the Tigris, the Euphrates, spreading life into each tributary. Or palms turned up, 8 trains arriving at the same station, at the same time. 2 others already emptied and heading back out. Boxcars with pet names like the racing boats of the wealthy. Interior affairs, foreign policy. Or elbows held close to the body. 10 escape routes and 2 shtetls. My great-grandmother in one, my great-grandfather in the other. I'm holding them both in my hands. I'm like God in the old camp song, when my daughter starts to play, and I, forgetting myself, clap and keep clapping. And I think maybe this world is like God's boat, and he's named it genocide. And the next world is also his and ours to share. 2. Foreign policy. Recital is the name of the poem I was reading at my first recital. My voice strung tight as young David's slingshot, his first war stretched between his sinewy hands. This is the battle he would sing about years later. But first, he had to learn to play the lyre, practice poetry and song, love and prayer. So much work just to celebrate his victory. Imagine him at the slaughterhouse, choosing the sheep, cutting its guts. His grandmother working quickly beside him, keeping the casing fresh to ensure the sensuous quality of the sound. She separates the fat, rinsing off the excrement and removing the membranes except for the muscle fiber. While David, his thick thumbs bleeding now, dries and braids the hanks. Music fit for a king. 3. Genocide. Recital is the name of the poem I was reading at my first recital, when in the back I heard somebody's grandmother shuffling down the hallway, her whole bridge game like Slavic barges in tow. And suddenly chairs were scraping all over the place. "Speak up," she says. "What are you saying?" I'm reading the numbers on her forearm. Each numeral a poem written by God. Perfect, meaningless, and containing all meaning, just as you'd expect in a poem by the poet laureate of all universes, of all religions, of all time. 4. Interior affairs. My wife's already in the kitchen baking cookies for our daughter's first recital when I sit down for breakfast. Somewhere it's nighttime. Bombs are falling and children are starving, but I'm pouring the milk and the sugar, whistling a song, and nibbling the nape of my lover's neck on my way back to the refrigerator. And neither of us can guess who will eventually find the cunning enemy cancer hiding like a secret code ring in the cereal box of the body. 5. All this I'm remembering was years ago. But years later, I'm rereading Recital to my daughter, who turned out to be a pianist after all, and is practicing for her own recital at the same North Shore Jewish nursing home. Her grandmother mired in the mud of the waiting list, and the whole family conspiring to maneuver her to the front of the line. She's the last soldier standing between me and my death. She's the pre-Columbus boat heading over the edge of the horizon, and I'm the nameless little boat following. Her husband died in the War of the Streets. And her brother died in the war to end all wars. And her father died in the war before that. I want to die. Not like Saul on the battlefield of my own sword, nor like Solomon, my house in disarray, but like David in his bed, reciting the Psalms, at war only with his own soul. 6 lullabies. I'm standing in the back of the room, listening to my daughter's recital, her fingers furiously pumping up and down, and now diminuendo towards the end, controlling the strings and valves of my heart. Maybe I am the sheep, sacrificing my inner life for the sake of her song. Or maybe her palms and fingers resting face down on the keys are only her palms and fingers resting. I'm alone in the back of the room, like a sentry guarding the free cookies, which, according to policy, cannot be eaten except in the recreation hall we call the afterlife. Otherwise, no one would sit still for the music. Half the audience is deaf, and the rest already sailing home on the faint breath of the small boats they've christened battles and lullabies. I want to die, not like Goliath, a victim of modern warfare, nor like Uriah, turned love's collateral damage, but like David himself, a shepherd leading his flock to feed among the flowers. 7. Would you still love me, my daughter asks, if I had played all the wrong notes? She's wondering what it means to be her, Jewish, American, and upper middle class in a time of war, when all she really wants to think about is poetry and song. Would you still love me, my wife asks, if I were old, ugly, too thin, toothless? She's bombing her own body weekly, shrapnel embedded in the roof and walls of the holy house where we prayed and made love. Would you still love me, God? David asked his God, if I killed a man for no better reason than to take his beautiful wife as my lover? Would you still love me? I asked my father, if instead of fighting my own battles, I deserted, conscientiously objected, sat on the sidelines, writing without even once harnessing the power to revise my life like words on a page? Would you still love me? God asked my grandmother in the reception hall before his grand recital. If I wiped out your entire family, let's say all at once, leaving one self-involved American tributary to tell the tale. Life, my grandmother once explained to me, is not poetry, never was, and was never meant to be. Now, by way of answer, I watch her wipe away the faint smudge of chocolate still fresh on God's lips. Your grandmother's one tough cookie, he whispers to me, while she rustles about, her chair scraping every which way. What? She asks. Speak up, or no one will hear a word you are saying. As for your certain and coming death, she adds, I don't know if you're a religious man, but you might try praying.